BMW M2s lost between 7 and 9% during last year. But that's of course only half of the story. To understand if this depreciation rate is high or low, we need to compare it to one of its arch rivals, the Porsche Cayman. While 718 Caymans aren't appreciated by all petrolheads, prices proved to be resilient when the market tanked in the second half of 2022, and more recently even recovered more than the market average. So how will we do this? As you might have guessed, it involves some number crunching. We'll first have a look at the current trends in the M2 market, then make a comparison to the Cayman market and the market in general, and finally speculate about the future value developments. Now if you're still doubting between a Cayman and an M2, or you secretly already know that you prefer the Cayman, you should check out this 718 GTS that's being auctioned by Sotheby's Motorsport. You can now bid on this well-optioned Miami blue Cayman with only 10,500 miles. Sotheby's Motorsport combines the best aspects of in-person and online auctions. Third-party inspections are the rule, not the exception, and buyers are financially vetted before they can bid. There's no need anymore to feel uneasy about high-value online auctions, so register as a bidder at sotheby'smotorsport.com and start bidding. This could be your new car. But let's have a look at the M2 data. Over here we have the F87 price trends in the US market for the base, competition and CS models. In the next price update, the German market will be included as well. Now compared to December 2022, base models lost 4.5% or $2,200, competitions 6% or $3,700, and CS's 5.1% or $5,000. These are good results and apply to both the manuals and the automatics, but more about that later. Now it's the first time that I'm covering the M2 market, so it might also be your first time that you're looking at one of my market updates. If so, welcome. Let me give you a little bit of a background on these price changes. You see, these are average changes. If you own an M2, it could be so that it lost more or less than what you see here. Some of it can be due to chance or the state where you live in. But it could also be because you added more or less mileage than the average. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Transitioning to the G87, things are getting interesting. We can see that used cars are priced above new cars. And this also happened in the Corvette C8 market. The price trend for new cars is not so informative, and we might say the same of the trend for the used cars. According to the trend, used cars dropped by 6.5% or $5,000. But there are currently 21 used cars listed for sale, and back in June there were only 8 cars listed for sale. In other words, it's difficult to trust this number. However, we can still dissect some interesting insights from the data. You see, back in June, the cars that were listed for sale for longer than 3 months still experienced price increases, while they were decreased in September 2023. The market is softening slightly, but we really need more data to get a good picture of the full depreciation trend. We'll therefore focus on the F87 market, and that means that it's time to figure out if the numbers in the M2 F87 market were good or bad. So let's compare them to the 718 Cayman market. Over here I added the Cayman base, S, GTS and 4-liter GTSs. As you can see, I have much more data for the Caymans. And if you want to know all the ins and outs about this market, I recommend that you check out my full Cayman market update. In this video we'll of course focus on the most recent period. So let's zoom in. Starting at the bottom, we can see that M2 base models are approximately $12,000 cheaper than 718 base models. The latter ones are priced almost identical to the competitions. The competitions lost 6% between December and September, while the 718 base models lost 2.4% between November and August, a bit less than the M2s. Remember though that M2 base models lost only 4.5%, and that's a bit closer to the Caymans. Moving to the top of the graph, we can see that 4-liter GTSs lost 3.1%, and that this is 2.5% for the normal GTSs. Again, a bit less than the M2. The CS lost 5.1%. Now looking at the middle of the graph, you can see that Cayman S prices curled up. But this is just a result of a mileage decrease for the listed cars. Correcting for this, we arrive at a decrease of 2.3%. Again, a slightly better result than for the M2s. Let's pull all of these results together into one graph. Over here we have now the M2 price changes between December 22 and September 23, and the Cayman price changes between November 22 and August 23. The result is clear, right? Caymans lost on average 2.6% and M2s 5%. Now this isn't intended to bash the M2s or anything like that, but the Caymans clearly performed better during the most recent period. However, it's important to interpret these numbers in the correct context. They're based on a short time period, so there is some randomness involved over here. I'll continue to update these trends to see how things will develop. So if you're interested in that, subscribe and keep an eye out for the M2 market updates. There's also another important thing that we need to remember. M2 price changes aren't bad at all when we compare them to the rest of the market. Over here we have the year-over-year price changes on the horizontal axis for most cars for which I'm tracking the prices, and the number of cars to which these changes apply on the vertical axis. This graph reveals that the average decrease during last year was 9.8%. The M2s decreased by an average rate of 5% during the last 9 months. Extrapolating this, we arrive at a year-over-year decrease of 7%. Now depreciation rates during the second half of 2022 were higher than usual, so this 7% is an underestimation. For the sake of it, let's assume a rate between 7 and 9%. And this is a decent result. The BMW M2 most likely depreciated at the same rate as the market or a bit slower. 718 Caymans, however, still performed a bit better. They lost 5.8% during last year. For the 4 cylinders this was 5%, but the 4-liter GTSs lost almost 9%. They're a lot newer after all. The V6 F-types though, so the base, S and 400 Sport lost on average 19.2%. Clearly a lot more than the M2 and the 718 Cayman. Suddenly the difference between the two of them seems rather insignificant, right? And with that it's time to wrap up and conclude. We saw that M2s lost on average 5% during the last 9 months. On a yearly basis this works out to be between roughly 7 and 9%. So this means that M2s lost a bit less than the market average. Not a bad result at all for a car that's produced in relatively high numbers. Caymans did slightly better, but F-Type significantly worse. Now as I mentioned before, the data that I have on the M2s is relatively limited, but it will only get better from here onwards. Moreover, you'll see more and more reasonably affordable cars on the channel. Think about M4s, Supras, the GR86, the MX-5 and the Nissan Z. The Ferraris, McLarens and Porsches will of course remain on the channel, but I hope to attract a slightly wider audience by integrating some more affordable models. The focus will still be on sports cars, but more of the middle segment will be included. And with that we arrive at the end of this video. A bit shorter than usual, but there's no need to drag this out. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car markets, but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you'll find detailed market analysis for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.